from District Council, Councillor Dan Land.
Good evening, councillors. Good evening, members of the public. I'd like to introduce David Murray, who is the ex-Minister, Baptist Minister for Thorpley-Soken. Some of you may have seen him on your travels. He undertakes quite a number of funerals in the local area. He will be my chaplain for the year, and I'd like to ask him now just to say a few words to get this meeting underway.
Very grateful for Councillor Land for the opportunity to serve him in this way. I realise that prayers at a council meeting are for some quite questionable, and therefore I don't want to cause any offence. If some wish to continue doing what you're doing or leave the room, please feel free to do so. I won't take any offence whatsoever, and hopefully you won't find my words offensive either. Let us pray. Almighty God, bless this council meeting, we pray, with good relationships, strong accountability, sound decisions, effective budgeting, and servant hearts. May each councillor treat each other with respect, listen to the other point of view with an open mind. May they not act out of partisanship or prejudice, but for the good of all the citizens of Tendring District. In the name of Jesus Christ we ask this. Amen.
Yep. Please be seated. Apologies for absence, please.
Joy Broderick.
Thank you, Chairman. I have apologies from Councillor Joy Broderick, Councillor Val Guglielmi, Councillor Carlo Guglielmi, Councillor Wiggins, Councillor Placey, Councillor Porter and Councillor Coley. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest, please? Councillor Honeywood.
I'd like to declare an interest as an Essex County Councillor. Thank you.
Councillor Henderson. Thank you. Anything further? No. Thank you very much. We move on to motions to Council, which are documented and outlined on pages 3 and 4 of your agenda. Right, councillors, I just wanted to make a brief explanation of the new rules which are coming into play or in force this evening. This was as a result of the Working Party agreed back in March. When it comes to motions, we have a new way of dealing with motions in that a motion is put forward to Council. We will then have a mover and a seconder be given the right to give us an explanation as to their motion. The leader then will be able to follow up on those comments, and following that the chairman will decide whether we take the motion on the night. If that is the case, then we move into the rules of debate. The mover and seconder once again will get to make comment and explain their motion, and a debate will follow. So that is a new way of working within the Council, and I am led to believe that we only have 30 minutes as a max time to discuss that motion, and that is the new procedure. So I hope that's clear with everyone. So with no further ado... Yes, Councillor Henderson.
Just raise one issue. Usually, Chairman will use their discretion if there are a number of speakers to actually extend that time. I'd hope you would give that due consideration.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Councillor Henderson. Thank you. And that was going to be part of my decision-making, so thank you for reminding me of that. With that in mind, we do then move on to the motion, as I explained, outlined in pages 3 and 4 of your agenda. And first to put forward their rationale this evening as to that motion would be Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chairman. And I move this part of the motion under Part 4, 12.4, consideration of motions, and to actually call on the Council and the Chairman to hear this motion tonight. And I'll explain why that I believe this motion should be and can be heard tonight. One, it has no financial implications for this Council. Two, it is not outside the Council's policy framework or outside this Council's procedure rules. And three, it is time sensitive. It's time sensitive because the Essex County Council Cabinet will be making their decision on the 23rd of July on this issue. There has no decision been made to date. There's been a statement by the leader, but that is not a decision. So we've got a real good chance now to actually express our concerns before that Cabinet meeting takes place. We've seen an overwhelming response from residents of all ages from across the county, expressing their shock, fear and sometimes anger towards these proposals. Consultation was open for 12 weeks. Over that 12 weeks, more information on the future plans for our libraries have been exposed and the true impact of those proposals. That's why 22,000 people responded. In addition, 1,000 letters and emails have been received, 57 petitions, around 60,000 signatures, many from this district, Mr. Chairman. This Council's Community Leadership Scrutiny Committee made recommendations to the Cabinet, and I was very pleased and thankful to the Cabinet for their support. The Cabinet supported the concerns we raised, which are in line with this motion. In fact, all of this motion tonight. I know many parish councils, borough district councils have had the opportunity to debate this issue and have voted unanimously to oppose any reduction of services within their libraries. We, as a full council, haven't had that opportunity to debate, Mr. Chairman. Within this district, 8 libraries are affected by these proposals. I believe it was right for the Cabinet to send a response to the consultation, but it was not a cross-party response. I believe this Council's opposition to the library proposal will be stronger and will carry much more weight if we debate it here tonight and send a unanimous cross-party support and decision from this full Council to the Cabinet of Essex County Council before they make that decision. Hopefully, Mr. Chairman, you will give us the opportunity to debate this tonight, and I've got lots more to say, but just to remind and again thank the Cabinet for their response when they did look at this, because they used the same arguments that we will be using tonight. They use the argument about usage of the libraries, not just for borrowing books. It has lots more usages, which I will talk about later. They talked about isolation and loneliness.
Can you bring some of this up during the debate, Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, and they also talked about population increases. So I'm grateful for that support, and hopefully we'll have the whole of the Chamber's support when we move the motion later. Thank you.
Oh, I just gave away what we might do. Councillor Stevenson, did you want to speak or reserve your right to speak?
No,
you've got to speak. Speak, please.
Sorry, this is just the reasons why we're having this debate tonight, and my colleague, Councillor Henderson, has pretty much stated them all. I just wanted to reiterate that it would have a much stronger way of putting our thoughts and everything else forward if every councillor in this had unanimous support behind our consultations, approaches and our motion. So, and the fact that we've got so many new members who have never taken part in that process, I think it's only fair that we give them the opportunity, if they wish to speak on it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Stock.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful to Councillor Henderson for reminding members that we have been through a process, as he rightly pointed out. I think it was the Community Leadership and Partnerships Overview and Scrutiny Committee much earlier this year discussed this issue in some length and made recommendations to Cabinet. When Cabinet discussed it, and I think Councillor Henderson was there, and if he wasn't, I apologise, when we discussed it at Cabinet. We actually went further in the responses we made as a Cabinet to Essex County Council on the libraries. We went further than even the open scrutiny had gone in a very robust rebuttal, if you like, of the proposals. We're very concerned about many of the issues and ideas that have been put forward in the consultation, and we're very happy about it. And obviously, I'm as delighted as anyone to hear that Essex have been moved by the strength of opinion, by the strength of the consultation responses, by people like we see here tonight, vocalising that, yeah, maybe not everyone goes to the library all the time, but that doesn't mean we want the libraries closed. They are a really powerful symbol of our society and of our communities. I am delighted, Chairman, to support this motion being dealt with on the night. I would like us to come forward with... Councillor Henderson's absolutely right, by the way, and I don't disagree with you, Councillor Henderson, to say that opposition didn't get a sign-up, if you like, to that Cabinet decision, notwithstanding the fact opposition leaders can now sit at Cabinet meetings. If this Council is going to make representations going forward, I would like them to be unanimous, to have the support of the entire Council. So if we can achieve that tonight and send a message forward, because as Councillor Henderson said, I understand a report was published tonight on the County Council website at about 5:30, so only a couple of hours, literally just 2 hours ago, with the report to the next Cabinet meeting at Essex, with recommendations that the libraries should be open, that more resource, from what I can gauge just a 2-second scan at it, more resource, more professionalisation of the library service. It looks promising, it looks good. But you're right, that decision hasn't been taken yet and may not be. So we do need to keep the pressure up. Happy to do that. Happy this gets debated now, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Stevenson and Councillor Stock. Thank you. I'm more than happy to hear the debate. As has been quite articulately put, the public have spoken, and that's important. And at this point in time, Essex County Council look like they've listened to some of the concerns that have been raised. I will need a proposer. Are you happy to propose that motion, Councillor Henderson? I'd need a seconder, please. Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Henderson, would you like to talk?
Thank you, Chairman. And first of all, what I would like to do is, because there's been some talk around for a while now, it's actually carrying a myth that Essex County Council never ever said they were going to close libraries. But if you actually did read the consultation, you will see, and I questioned this comment when it was first announced in Cabinet at the time, that it was actually a decision being made, because they did say at the very start they will be closing libraries. They will be closing Tier 3 libraries which didn't meet the criteria. After 6 months, after 12 months, then the remainder would close. They said they would close Tier 4 libraries as well. So there was an issue, and there still is, as far as I'm concerned, an issue with closing libraries. Because if you see what's come out, and Councillor Stock just mentioned it, I've only just got this on my emails. It says, working with and supporting community groups or other partner organisations to set up community-run libraries with the aim of ensuring a library service is retained in every current location. Now, we've had something similar to this. I'm going to go off speech now. We had something similar to this when we were looking at the fire stations. They said every fire station was going to remain open, but then they removed the equipment, and then they turned Harwich Fire Station in a voluntary covered fire station completely without full-time staff. So when Essex County Council say these things, we know it's not worth the paper it's written on. And you also said, and we've said in the responses that we put forward earlier about the issue of libraries are not just for borrowing books. They are a fundamental part and a building block for lifelong learning in all our communities. It's part of social justice, social inclusion, those opportunities that make everyone have a really good start in life, young people having that first start. We talk on council on lots of occasions about making sure every child has a good start in life, and these, I believe, are fundamental to that good start. I remember when my young child went to the summer reading challenges, and when he went back to school after that summer, looking forward to picking up his certificate with a big smile on his face, showing that he'd have achieved something. And we know that libraries are not just about books. There are about people going in there now to fill in their benefit claims. People need that internet. Some people can't afford to pay for internet at home. We know there are lots of groups within libraries, now voluntary groups. I was actually asked, they called it the big conversation or big something about 4 years ago, to try and encourage groups into libraries to take part in those libraries and the voluntary sectors to come in to actually play a part. There was one incident where we actually got a voluntary sector into that library, a voluntary sector group called Teen Talk in Harwich, which actually then came over to Clacton and Walton to actually support young people on mental health support. They were actually started to be charged for using that service to actually supply that mental health support to young people around our district. And then we wonder why people have been forced out of libraries. We know the book stocks in libraries have depleted year on year on year. We know the investment in libraries have been depleted year on year on year. And I know I'm over my time, but I just want to make one point. There's a young person in this audience, Josephine, who's actually been campaigning. This is a sign of the young person who's saying how important it is for that start in life, and how important it is to have that access to that lifelong learning for a very early age in every community in our district. 8 libraries. Josephine actually led a march. She's done all sorts of things. She's a credit to the young people out there who are actually showing that they want to stand up and protect something that they hold dearly to themselves and for others to enjoy throughout their lives. So, Chairman, I know I'm over my time, but I know plenty of other people are going to talk, and I know I've got a chance to wind up. Libraries are not just about books. And the data that Essex County Council actually came out with at the start of this process, they said it wasn't reliable. They didn't know how many people were going in libraries. They didn't know the reasons why they were going in libraries. They were going in libraries for all sorts of reasons, not just books. But they never had that information at hand. They picked up tier 1, 2, 3 and 4 out of the blue, out of the sky, and then decided that they were going to make these closures and cuts. I hope, and I'm glad, everyone's going to support this night, because we need to send a clear message to Essex County Council. Last thing, Essex County Council, that we want fully paid staff in all our libraries. We want to make sure those libraries are reliable and they're not hit and miss as they would become if we had to rely on fully volunteers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Very passionate as always. Councillor Stevenson, you've only got a minute and a half because Ivan took up.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to bring things a little closer to home, a bit more personal. I wanted to show what a Tier 4 library offers outside of just the bookings of in and out of books. And if anybody's unsure who I'm talking about the Holland Library. So just a glance around the library when I went and saw it, I saw that they had a baby and toddler group. That's not recognised by Essex County Council. They meet once a week. I saw a knitting group that met once a week. I saw 2 book groups that met once a month. There's a gentleman reading the paper with his friend. There's a summer reading challenge where children are encouraged to read 6 books over the summer period and earn themselves a medal when they complete that. There was IT, and the staff there were helping somebody with benefits. They told me they would do that quite regularly and with the universal credit. And there was other people saying that without this, they would be digitally excluded and literate. My words, not theirs, but that's what they were saying. The staff knew every customer by first name and nearly all interacted to discuss events going on in their lives. Nothing to do with books or anything else. This was a social place, a very personal, professional service. So let's talk about the plans. To do that, we need to look at some of the history. In 2011, Essex did the very same thing they're doing now. A consultation which resulted in Holland being reduced from 29.5 hours to 16 hours. What that meant was that on a Wednesday afternoon, the ladies' club that met next door, over 100 members that used the opportunity to exchange books no longer did. The same happened with the art club. They no longer used the library. And kids were only allowed to use the library Monday and Tuesday afternoons and Saturday mornings. All other times they'd be at school. And then Essex turned around and said, numbers are down. Well, I run a shop. If I close it for 3 days, I'm pretty sure my customers will be down. So that's tier 4. It's only one. Why are we worried? Well, tier 3, which is Brightlingsea, Frinton, Walton, West Clacton, Manningtree, as my colleague said. 6 out of the 8 libraries in the district are all under threat. And I read this from the consultation, and I know it's changed, but from the consultation it says, if no suitable offer, and by that they mean volunteers, for a location received and accepted within 6 months of Cabinet approval of the strategy, we intend to reconsult on the future of the library. And I took that mean that we'll close it. In other places they talk about outreach, so I looked into that. I looked into the mobile libraries, which meet in the villages for 30 minutes every 3 weeks. So whilst keeping every library is a step in the right direction, we want to see it manned and staffed by libraries and we want to see our staffed libraries remain staffed by paid employees. Thank you very much.
Councillor Stevenson, may I congratulate you on your timings there. Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Chairman. For those of you who know me will know that this is a real passionate issue for me in Wharton-on-the-Naze. We're a Category 3 library, and we actually get 16 hours a week from Essex County Council to run our library. And Walton is an extremely deprived town with a lot of deprivation. I'm also a school governor. Our school in statistics were produced by Essex County Council, which have now been stopped since 2016. Our school was the 28th most deprived schools out of 860-something primary schools in Essex. So I was mortified to find that we were in a Category 3 banding. I have spent weeks with others looking at statistics and comparing libraries across the entire county. Essex County Council are responsible for education. They're responsible for adult social care. They're responsible for children and adolescent social care. For me, a library represents far more than borrowing books. It offers a holistic approach to people to prevent social isolation, to assist young people and adults who have very poor literacy, etc., to come and use the resources in the library, the computers, etc., which many deprived homes don't have. I actually spend a minimum of half a day a month in my local library, and it's one of the most joyful experiences I have as a councillor. We have a lot of poor pensioners there. They can't afford to buy the daily newspaper. They come in to read the newspaper. We have a weekly community coffee morning there run by volunteers. But I can tell you, in the 8 years I've been going there on a very regular basis, there are times when it struggles to be sustained with the volunteers. So for the County Council to propose closing or to transfer the running of such an important provision in all communities to a voluntary sector beggars belief. And I'm absolutely, appalled at this, and I feel this has been a total betrayal of the council taxpayer, because at the end of the day, I will repeat, Essex County Council is responsible for education, young people's education as well as adult education. That has taken a huge slash over the years. Adult education is almost non-existent in Essex now. So when the government talks about retraining people who are unemployed, etc., Essex don't do an awful lot to help those people, I have to say. But I would also like to say that there is a document that's been published under strictly confidential, which I have access to, and it's the EU settlement agreement. It's produced by the Home Office. It's gone out to every local authority in the country, as well as other people who have done their homework have been able to access it. And that specifies that libraries must be able to provide opportunities for people looking for settlement in the United Kingdom to be able to make their registrations through the libraries. Well, we're already running at 16 hours, only 16 hours in Walton. If we go to a Category 3 and do what they propose, we might as, there will be no library, it won't exist. And I feel really strongly that all the residents in Tendring must stand up against this and, really fight for this further cut. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Stock.
Thank you, Jim. I'm going to be quite boring and broadly agree with what the previous speakers have said. I think Councillor Miles raises a good point. The issue of peripherality that you get in coastal areas is one that I've been banging on about for years, and is one that governments don't take seriously enough. The fact that you were seeing it with the libraries, we'll see it with any feature, fire stations, hospitals, anything like that. When you try and calculate the number of people using them in a seaside location, particularly in a peninsula situation, so not like a nice coastline like the south coast where you've got a whole row of towns all next to each other. Now, you go into Harwich, and on your sat-nav you can see the sea on the left of you and the sea on the right of you. And when you're coming up with statistical calculations to work out whether you should fund a new school or sixth form college or keep running the local library or whatever it is, you think, oh, there aren't enough people living there compared to, say, Colchester or Chelmsford, which, of course, has got a catchment area and a population that completely encircles it. If you do a circle around Harwich or Walton or Clacton or Manningtree even, most of it's in the sea. And that is a big issue because it does affect funding. It does mean that our residents get a raw deal time and time again. We've got the longest coastline of any district council in the country, and we suffer disproportionately because of that. The issue about volunteers is one that I tried to make quite sensitively when the Cabinet discussed this. I think it was back in January, because let's face it, volunteers play a phenomenal role in our society and in our communities. They run our charities. They do a terrific amount of work in many respects. But we did make that point when the Cabinet responded to Essex County Council. We said that we felt that using volunteers is not always reliable, could result in libraries not being manned or not being open. And there's a loss of knowledge which experienced librarians have, because an experienced librarian it's a highly skilled job, actually. It's well-intentioned volunteers with the best will in the world. And I say I'm really trying not to be critical in any way of anyone who wants to volunteer, particularly wants to volunteer to help out in the library. You do still need that professionalism and that professional quality of staff. And it's a point we made all the way back in January. I welcome the spirit, Chairman, of the motion. I think if we can come up with formal words, which we've got before us today, that we can all agree on, and send a powerful message to Essex to make sure that the right decision is taken, that our libraries are not simply kept open, but are kept open with better resources, not with poorer resources. I'm happy that we all play our role in reimagining the library for the 21st century, because we can all agree and accept that the old-fashioned notion of a library that just had a load of books in it is a bit dated. That isn't what a library is like these days. Libraries are used for all sorts of purposes. The strength of a library is very difficult to put a price on. It's impossible to put a price on. You can see how much it costs to run, but the price to the society, you can't really value that. And I think we could do much, much more with our libraries, and I'm happy to be a part of that process going forward and trying to come up with what those ideas are. But I'm happy to support the motion, Chairman, as it's written and presented. Thank you.
Thank you for all the comments made, all very valid. Like Councillor Stock and others have mentioned, the activities taking place within libraries can be quite ethereal at times, not necessarily as tangible as you might think. Such matters as Clacton Library has a cafe for people with learning disabilities, for example, to advance their skills. So I think that the libraries are a very important piece of fabric within society. And I'm glad that we've been able to have the discussion this evening, and that as it currently stands, we all look to agree with one another. So with that in mind, we should move to the vote. Councillor Henderson?
Yes, just a couple of responses, because Councillor Miles made a very good point about poverty and deprivation being taken into account. And that is a big issue, because if you look at some of the libraries, they're saying about 23% on the data of Essex County Council are children under 9. And if you was to look in my area, I've got areas of deprivation in Harwich, and I'm sure that there is other parts in Clacton. That number would probably go up because of the reliance of those families who can't afford the books, who have to rely on the internet and libraries to actually be able to use those facilities. And of course, it was mentioned the older people as well, the isolation. And again, 22% of the users of libraries under their data are older people. And that's probably a bigger number around here because we've got a bigger population of elderly people, so that's probably even more needed. If I can, on the deprivation issue, if I can quote some comments from the UN visitor when he was here in Jaywick, when he said, Philip Alston said, United Nations, the reality is that digital assistance has been outsourced to public libraries and civil society organisations. Public libraries are the front line of helping the digitally excluded and digitally illiterate who wish to claim their right to universal credit. While library budgets have been severely cut across the country, they still have to deal with the influx of universal credit claimants who arrive at the library, often in a panic, to get help on claiming their benefits online. And that to me is a stark example of how libraries are needed for other things. And I do wonder sometimes, again on poverty and deprivation, how Essex doesn't realise some of the policies and some of the decisions they're making, how that's impacting on the less fortunate and the most vulnerable people in our society, because they actually say themselves in a booklet that they've just written. They presented it to the peer review, which we call the LGA. They look at councils to see how well they're doing. And they say here, our future focus must be on understanding and responding to the drivers of disadvantage, deprivation and inequality across the county. How is this responding to deprivation and disadvantage and inequality when you're actually, you're excluding certain sections of the communities from a service that they probably rely on and should have as a right? So the deprivation and poverty issue is a big issue around here. It's going up. We've seen increases going up and up. It's not being tackled, and it's getting worse. This is a lifeline. These are the foundations, like I said, of community social justice. Everyone should be entitled to access to a library. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Stott, before we go to the vote, did you want to make any more comments? Just finally then, I'd like to thank everyone this evening, especially from the public, that's taken the opportunity and their time to come out and express their opinion and show us exactly what they feel about this. So thank you very, very much for doing that. And one last point, and there's a learning curve to us all here, because we, as human beings, can be quite... sometimes we can be... we need to make sure that we don't always react at the last minute to things. So I advise all councillors to try and promote as widely as possible, and I know you try to do this already, your libraries within your communities. There's so many things we can do. We can share their posts on social media. We can reply to newsletter items. We can write into the local paper about the strength of the libraries and what they do for local communities. That type of communication and activity is only going to serve us well into the future. So I'd like now to move to the vote. Yes, madam, sorry. Okay. I'm afraid, madam, we are unable to do that at the council meeting this evening. I'm happy for you to email Councillor Stock, myself, or any of the other councillors in the room for that clarification. Is that all right? We're good at communicating in this council. Please do, for a point of clarification, email us and we'll get you that information, all right? Or ring us or ring me. Thank you.
A point of clarification, the actual motion does say no reductions in library services. As far as I'm concerned, that motion refers to removing paid library staff from libraries. Anyone who supports this agrees that we should have a full-time library paid staff in every library. Thank you.
Right, we go to the vote, please. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Any against? Unanimous. Thank you. Right, thank you, councillors. Thank you, members of the public. That's the meeting closed this evening. Thank you very much.